Welcome to That Human Said What? The show where Michael Ryan and Christine Scott talk about UFOs, the paranormal, strange ideas, and the things that make you stop and say, wait a minute. And now from the Embarcadero Lounge, here are Michael and Christine.
Welcome everybody to episode 2 of That Human Said What? And here we're just recovering from the first episode. We had to have the lounge cleared out and cleaned up and tidied here at the Embarcadero Lounge, where this is coming from.
Yeah, I got a little silly. There was peanuts thrown. An ex-boyfriend showed up. The whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Yes, and we have to invest in a bouncer. We forgot the bouncer. That's the most important part of a lounge. But I have to correct a couple of things. It always takes a few episodes to shake out all the bugs on a new show. So last week, we kind of mentioned that this episode was going to be with our guest host, Al Capicilli. And we got that wrong. So today's episode is going to be episode number 2. And then Al's episode is going to be the next episode, episode 3. And that is where he's asking us questions about ourselves. And you can hear everything you ever wanted to know about Christine and I. And we have a lot to say, apparently, on that. And so also I wanted to mention that the Martini guy, he will be back this episode. He made a bit of a splash with everybody, so I was surprised. So he will be returning in this episode. And also, before we dive right into our topic today, I just want to tell everybody I am having a zero-proof botanical gin martini. Oh,
yum.
Yes.
Well, my martini is extra dirty tonight, so let's get into it.
Okay, so now today's topic on That Human Said What is, why do some UFOs show up on radar while others don't? And, while we were researching this, a lot of things came up that really surprised me. And it's funny because when you're into UFOs for so many decades, there's a lot of things that you just kind of take for granted, and that's the way it is, and people have explained it, and you don't have to think about it. But if you take a topic like we're going to take today, like radar, and you look into it, I thought, wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff I didn't really think of before, and hopefully that will be what the listeners think about this, because there's definitely a few things that I was surprised. I kind of thought, I thought I knew about that, but apparently not. So one of the most intriguing aspects that I found out is that radar evidence is pretty inconsistent. Even though there's been a lot of well-documented cases, there's a lot of things we don't know about radar. And all of these different aspects really play into different stories. There's something we're going to cover a little bit later. From now on, it's a question I'm always going to ask. When there's a radar case, I thought, wow, I never thought of this. But when we get to that point, I'll mention it, because you'll be doing it too. You'll be saying, okay, when there's a radar case, I got to know this. And I'm just getting everyone's attention, because it is super interesting. So we're going to discuss a few aspects of radar. The first point is understanding how radar works. And so Christine is going to handle that.
Yeah, and I did not really know how radar works. Apparently it doesn't see objects the way the human eye does. Radar transmits radio waves and then measures the energy that reflects back. So whether an object appears on radar depends on many factors, like the object's size, its shape, the material from which it's made, its altitude, weather conditions, the operating frequency of the radar, and the angle at which the radar beam strikes the object. And because there are so many variables, then two objects of similar size could produce very different radar signatures.
It's funny because just in the first point, those things that you mentioned, you don't really think about how important all of those are. Because when you hear about a radar case or a UFO story that involves radar, you automatically think, oh, everything's perfect and the radar's perfect. And, if it didn't see it, then that's a problem. But when you start throwing in all of these other factors, things become very interesting very quickly. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about, and here's another factor that really I never thought of before. All radar systems are different. They're not all the same, not all designed to do the same things. So we're going to cover the main types of radar. So there's the military air defense radar, airport surveillance radar, weather radar, marine radar, and ground-based tracking radar. And, each one of these systems operates differently and is optimized for specific purposes. And an object that is easily detected by one type of radar may not be detected at all by another radar. So we're just going to cover a little bit, take a little bit deeper dive into each one of these kinds of radars. The other thing to keep in mind that these are general kind of bits of information. So at the end of this episode, you are not going to be a radar technician. This is not a course. So these are just kind of in the realm of and general facts. So with military air defense radar, of course, the purpose is to find aircraft and missiles as early as possible. Typically, they can detect objects in a 200 to 300 mile range, which is 320 to 480 kilometers. And there are some over the horizon systems, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. They can see much further. And these military air defense radars can generally detect fighters, bombers, missiles, and large unidentified objects. Now, the weakness of this radar is because of the Earth's curvature, it cannot see very low-flying objects at long distances because radar waves, they travel in a straight line. Now, that's sad news for a lot of you out there if you're flat Earth people, because in the research I did, a lot of it mentions the curvature of the Earth and the problem that radar has with that. And a good example is a real UFO flying at 500 feet altitude may disappear from radar beyond a roughly 30 to 40 mile range because it drops below the radar's horizon, which is due to the curvature of the Earth. And also airport radar, and there's actually two kinds of airport radar. So this sends out radio waves and listens for reflections. It doesn't care whether the aircraft has a transponder turned on or not. And that range is typically 50 to 70 miles, and it can detect aircraft, birds, large drones, weather, unknown objects, which could be UFOs. And the secondary airport radar is radar that does not detect objects directly. Instead, it asks the aircraft, "Who are you?" And these are the aircraft's transponders, which every commercial aircraft has. And it responds with its identity, altitude, and speed. And of course, UFOs don't have transponders, so they don't reply. So UFOs would not appear on a secondary radar at all. And next, there's the weather radar. And of course, as you can imagine, that's designed for something completely different. So its job, of course, is to detect rain, hail, snow, clouds, tornado rotation. And that range is around 150 to 250 miles. Now, weather radar usually ignores solid objects because it's optimized to detect precipitation. Next is marine radar, and that's used on ships. Mainly, it's used to avoid collisions, and that range is about 12 to 48 miles, and it is really good at seeing ships, coastlines, buoys, islands, because you don't want to hit an island. That would be bad on your captain's resume. And of course, they're not designed at all for high altitude aircraft. And next is ground-based tracking radar. Now, these are specialized systems that are used around missile test ranges, launch facilities, military bases, research facilities, and they're designed for extremely accurate tracking of specific objects. Now, here's something that everyone should know, because I didn't know most of this. I hate to confess that. Is why can't radar see everything? Because, me not knowing a lot about radar, I just assumed that if you had one kind of radar, it could see everything. And the biggest one is what we've already mentioned, because the Earth is curved and these radar waves go in straight lines. Also, when the radar beam goes out in a straight line, that means the curvature of the Earth is, blocking the beam, or not blocking it, but it's dropping off. Also, mountain ranges, that kind of thing, it blocks a radar beam. So if you can imagine standing on a beach, you can't see a ship once it goes beyond the horizon, and that's exactly the same problem with radar. So here's another example. Suppose a radar antenna is 100 feet above the ground. A UFO is flying at 500 feet. Even with a very powerful radar, the Earth blocks the signal at roughly 30 to 40 miles. Now, the UFO hasn't disappeared. It's simply below the radar horizon. Okay, so also, like I mentioned, those are the basic radars. Now, there are some radar systems that can see below the limitations, which I've already mentioned. So we'll just quickly go over those. And as we've talked about, conventional radar, which is still the most common kind of radar, and this is what you'll find at the vast majority of Air Force bases, Navy bases, civilian airports, NORAD, regional sites, and air defense stations. And the problem is, it is affected by everything we've talked about so far. Now, there's newer radars, and one is called OTH, which is over the horizon radar, and they see things completely in a different way than conventional radar. So instead of sending radio waves straight out, these systems use very low frequency radio waves that can reflect off the ionosphere, allowing the signal to skip over the horizon and illuminate areas thousands of kilometers away. So typically, they can see 620 to 1,860 miles away, and some systems can even monitor greater distances than that. So, of course, the advantage of that is enormous range, can provide early warning of aircraft and missiles, can monitor large ocean areas. Their only limitations are they have a little bit lower resolution than conventional radar, less precise for tracking individual aircraft, and the performance depends on the ionospheric conditions, and definitely not ideal for guiding interceptors. Now, another radar that has a big advantage over all the other radars we've talked about is airborne radar. And of course, this is one of the best ways to see everything, because aircraft, especially like Boeing's E-3 Sentry, which is the AWACS, they fly around 30,000 to 35,000 feet, and from that altitude you can see, everything below you. And next, there's space-based sensors, which a lot of modern militaries use, and these are especially good for missile launch detection, large heat sources, and broad area surveillance, which you can see from space. And also, if you've networked your radar systems, different radar facilities working together, land, sea, and air, that can do away with some of the limitations we've talked about before. Now, the problem is the vast majority of military bases do not have over-the-horizon radar. So many classic UFO radar cases from the 40s on up until even the early 80s, they occurred before a lot of radar's advantages and new technology. So a lot of the stuff we talked about at the very beginning, they still apply. So radar had a lot of limitations.
And there have been cases with both radar and visual confirmation, which certainly strengthens the case if you got independent confirmation from both eyewitnesses and radar. So we'll just talk about some of the more famous ones. The 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, which was a series of unexplained radar and visual sightings over the U.S. Capitol between July 12th and July 29th in 1952. Basically, it hit a high on the consecutive weekends of July 19th to the 20th and July 26th to the 27th, when multiple unidentified flying objects paced passenger planes. They evaded scrambled fighter jets and were simultaneously tracked on three separate radars.
Yes. Yeah.
Civilian air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport, which is now called Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, and military personnel at Andrews Air Force Base watched bright glowing orbs and spheres stop, hover, and make radical instantaneous maneuvers. Airline pilots visually tracked rapidly moving silent lights that outpaced aircraft and moved in ways impossible for conventional planes. And there was jet interceptions. The Air Force scrambled F-94 interceptors to the Capitol's airspace. And the pilots said they were swarmed and surrounded by unidentifiable blindly bright lights that quickly vanished off radar when pursued. And of course, the Air Force said that was all temperature inversions.
Yes. Another good case for the both radar and visual, that was the very famous case of the RB-47H reconnaissance aircraft. And coincidentally, we have that up on our Facebook page. There's a story there where you can read all about it. And that was in 1957, that aircraft, the RB-47H, was the state-of-the-art for intelligence gathering. And it was seen on multiple aircraft radars, on multiple ground radars, and also seen visually. So that is about as good as it gets, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And all these incidents involved combinations of pilots, radar operators, military personnel, and civilian witnesses. And the agreement between all these independent sources is one reason we're still talking about all these cases decades later in some cases.
Now, of course, there's always the visual sightings without radar, which is always a bit of a conundrum. Many UFO reports involve multiple witnesses, but no radar confirmation. So there's several possibilities have been suggested by different scientists over the years. And one of them is, radar was not covering that area. That's definitely more possible. I didn't realize how possible that was. The object was flying below radar coverage. So this is the point, if you can remember at the beginning of the show, I said, it's important how far away the radar station is from the object, because most traditional radars that are around the country, after about 50 miles or somewhere in there, because the curvature of the Earth, if you are below a certain altitude, 500 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever, you are now invisible no matter what you are. UFO, airplane, whatever you have up there, the radar just can't see below that straight line horizon. And of course, if a mountain blocks the radar beam, the radar frequency was unsuitable for detecting the object. The object reflected very little radar energy. That's a very important thing to remember. or the object possessed unusual physical properties that reduced its radar signature. And in many cases, it's impossible to determine which explanation is correct.
And one most of you have certainly heard of was the 2006 O'Hare International Airport sighting. That happened November 7th, 2006, around 4:15 p.m. 12 United Airlines employees and a few witnesses outside O'Hare International Airport reported a sudden UFO sighting. Federal authorities at the airport received a report that a group of 12 employees were witnessing a metallic saucer-shaped craft hovering over gate C-17. The object was first spotted by a ramp employee who was pushing back United Airlines Flight 446, which was departing Chicago for Charlotte, North Carolina. How would you like to get this? The employee apprised Flight 446's crew of the object above their aircraft. And so the object was witnessed by pilots, airline management, and mechanics, yet no air traffic controller saw the object, and it did not show up on radar. And get this, they described the object as completely silent, 6 to 24 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Dark gray in color. Several independent witnesses outside the airport also saw the object. One described a disc-shaped craft hovering over the airport. According to this witness, the object shot through the clouds at high velocity, leaving a clear blue hole in the cloud layer, and the hole seemed to close itself slightly afterward. The disc was visible for approximately 5 minutes, was seen by close to a dozen United Airlines employees, ranging from pilots to supervisors. They heard the chatter on the radio, and they raced out to view it. And it prompted the FAA first denied they had any information on it until the Chicago Tribune, which was investigating the report, filed a Freedom of Information Act. The FAA then ordered an internal review of air traffic communications tapes to comply with the Freedom of Information request. Then they uncovered a call by the United supervisor to an FAA manager in the airport tower concerning UFO sighting. But again, no radar. That was a pretty big thing to see.
Yes, and lots of people saw it. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
Now, here's something. Can advanced technology influence radar detection? So we don't often think about this when we hear about radar cases. Now, one of the speculative possibilities is that an advanced technology could intentionally control how it interacts with radar. Now, if such technology existed, it might theoretically absorb radar energy, redirect radio waves, alter its electromagnetic properties, create false radar targets, and appear on some radar systems while remaining invisible to others. Now that's very interesting because you don't often hear about that. Maybe these UFO, if they are craft from somewhere else, maybe some of them have devised a method that absorbs the radar energy or technology that we fully don't understand, and that could be why they're not showing up.
And now let's talk about human vision versus radar. Because there's a common assumption that if people can clearly see an object, then radar should also detect it. Not so, because visible light and radar operate in completely different regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. An object may reflect visible light effectively, while reflecting very little radar energy. And some materials and shapes interact with radio waves very differently than they do with ordinary light.
Now, also radar contacts without visual sightings, so there's lots of those as well. It's kind of the reverse of what we've mentioned before. Now, possible explanations for seeing it on radar but not seeing it with your eyes is, of course, darkness, cloud cover, great distance, very high altitude, objects visible only outside the human visual spectrum, equipment anomalies, and atmospheric effects. And of course, these cases demonstrate that radar and human vision do not always provide identical information.
And are all UFOs the same phenomenon? There's also a possibility that the term UFO covers several entirely different phenomenon, because reports could involve experimental military aircraft, drones, as we've talked about at length, atmospheric or plasma phenomena, instrument anomalies, or objects or technologies that remain unexplained. If multiple phenomena are being grouped together under one label, then it would not be surprising that their radar characteristics vary significantly.
And of course, there's reports of electromagnetic effects. So some close encounter reports describe unusual effects such as radio interference, compass malfunctions, engine failures, and electrical system disruptions. And so if an unknown phenomenon can interfere with electrical systems, it raises the question of whether radar systems might also be affected under certain circumstances. Now, of course, we don't have, there's not solid proof of any of this, but it's definitely something to discuss and think about.
And then the physical object question. Some UFO reports describe characteristics commonly associated with physical objects like radar returns, landing traces, heat effects, and electromagnetic interference. But other reports describe objects that appear visually, disappear suddenly, leave no radar evidence, and display unusual flight characteristics. So this raises the possibility that not every UFO report represents the same type of phenomenon.
So as we wrap up our conversation about radar with all these interesting facts, perhaps the most important observation is that radar evidence does not follow a single consistent pattern. So some UFOs are seen both visually and on radar. Some are seen visually but not detected electronically. Others are detected electronically without being seen. So rather than pointing toward one simple explanation, these differences may suggest that researchers are dealing with multiple types of phenomena, or that important aspects of these events remain poorly understood. Whether the explanation ultimately lies in atmospheric physics, advanced technology, limitations of radar systems, or something entirely unexpected remains an open question. I think one thing is certain: the relationship between UFOs and radar continues to be one of the most fascinating and least understood subjects. And Christine, what I have learned from digging into this is some fundamental changes in the way I'm going to think. And that is, before, if I read a UFO case, from the 50s or the 80s or whenever it was, and they said, oh, there's a radar base, 40 miles away or 60 miles away, I just assumed, oh, well, then he should see it on radar. I never in a million years took into account the curvature of the Earth.
No, me neither.
And that these radar beams go in a straight line. So, after 50 miles, the Earth is curving away. So it's creating a dead zone that is below what the radar can see. So that really changes my perspective when people say, oh, 5 people saw it, but it wasn't on radar. As if because it wasn't on radar, that nullifies the 5 people seeing it. They must have not seen anything solid. But now I understand this a little bit better, and it's not being seen on radar for a reason. There's reasons why, and you have to know all this information. So I think a lot of times we're very quick to jump to conclusions when we don't consider all the different elements. And what we've talked about today, there's a lot of extra elements when you talk about radar. It's been kind of an eye-opener, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, just having seen Close Encounters again recently, do you remember the radar scene? When they're in there's a scene in airliners, and there's a bunch of guys in the control room.
Yes.
And they started talking about the object. I was just thinking about this all through that great scene that's just done in the control room. You never see the UFO.
Yeah, you never see it. Yeah. Oh, God, that was a great film.
Yeah, I was so happy to see it again recently.
I know. Wow, Christine, what is that sound?
Is that the martini guy?
I believe it is. I've just been handed a note, and I'm curious to what it's going to say. Let me just open it up here. These are very hard to open notes. Because last time he had a question for us, but we didn't have enough time to answer it. But let me read this one. Oh, so not quite what I expected, because I thought this was going to be, he's talking about or wants us to analyze something he's noticed in what we've just been talking about. But actually, he's mentioned, where do we get our olives from?
Oh, I cannot divulge my sources.
Oh, that is...
I have a guy. I got a guy.
They're martini guy. Where do we get our olives from? Get him off the payroll. He's supposed to. These notes are supposed to be little nuggets of wisdom and things that are really profound, and that's not what I'm expecting, to be honest with you, listeners. So I'm quite disappointed.
Well, some people do find meaning staring into the bottom of a glass, though.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I am definitely staring into my zero-proof botanical gin martini.
I think I need a second dirty martini. If the martini guy can go up to the bar and get me one, I'll catch you later.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll pay you back.
Have him go now, as they say, to do that. And before we go, I just want to say, isn't the Embarcadero Lounge lovely?
It is.
Yes, it's just a very pleasant place, and very pleasant patrons. No rowdiness that I can detect. Maybe I'm leaving too early, but...
Yeah, well, you stick around midnight, things get... Oh, I wasn't here until midnight last time. That was someone else.
That was somebody else. So that was the end of today's episode, and I actually learned a lot. I'm surprised. And I have to mention that next week's episode, it will be the episode where we have guest interviewer Al Capicilli, who is just fantastic. And he is going to put us on the spot, or turn the tables, as it were, and he's going to ask us questions about ourselves. So for that, I'm going to have a few martinis before I start answering that.
Whereas I need no excuse to talk about myself.
Now, before they kick us out, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next time.
We will catch you on the flip side.
The opinions expressed by the Martini Guy are his own and may have been influenced by one too many olives. That's all for tonight's conversation. Thanks for spending a little time with Michael and Christine. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, leave a comment, and join us again next time. Until then, keep wondering about the world, keep asking questions, and remember, sometimes the most interesting things in life are the things we can't quite explain. This has been a Michael Ryan production. A ring-a-ding-ding!